behavior is behavior. It's all sort of the same thing. Um, I do occasionally still teach students in the classroom at the university, but primarily I teach online now. And I like it because it forces me to think about every single thing that I'm doing. When I'm designing the courses, I like to do all of the design before the class actually begins. Now, I know teachers now in public schools, they don't really have that option, right? Because it's just being sprung on them now that you're teaching online in the fall. Okay, so, you know, you can't prepare for a class that's going to be a year from now. You kind of have to prepare for August or September. But a couple things that are, well, a few things that are really important is first, know everything you can, learn everything you can about your learning management system and what the learning management system can do. At the university where I work, we use Blackboard. And Blackboard has a lot of stuff built into it. I can do quizzes through Blackboard. I can do polling through Blackboard. I can post videos. I can teach face-to-face, sort of, you know, synchronously, everyone there at the same time. I can post articles. I can do all sorts of stuff through Blackboard. I could have them work through things on Blackboard. There's a lot of functionality there. And I wouldn't have known all of that if I didn't have to design online courses. Because before, all I would do is post my notes for the week and post the syllabus and post the quiz, you know, scores, keep the grade book there. But now I design it all around what the learning management system can do. Blackboard's a frequently used one. There's Canvas. I don't know what the other ones are, but some have a lot of things you can do. Second, you got to think about what you could do with your students at home that you wouldn't be able to do if they were all there in the classroom. And that's kind of turning it around from what can't I do because they're not here.
Right.
You know? But instead, if we think about what can I do with them at home? Because I don't know about you, but my house, it has a lot of stuff in it. I have a kitchen, I have a living room, I have a dining room, I have bedrooms, I have bathrooms. I have a yard. There's a lot of stuff here. And what you may be able to do with parents' help or older siblings' help, it's going to often require someone else's help, especially kids in lower grades or kids in special ed or kids who, you know, the parents might not want getting into things. Think about like measurement. If you're working on measurement, there's a lot of stuff you can measure around the house. As long as it's someone in the house, somewhere in the house, there's a ruler or a tape measure, even a dollar bill. A dollar bill is 6 inches long. There's a lot of things you can measure. You can measure volume because you have sink, you have measuring cups. If you don't have measuring cups, use a regular cup. You have teaspoons. There's a lot of stuff you can measure. You know, think about all the things that you can do at home with the student at home that you can't do there. Now, again, it's going to require someone's help. While you are teaching online, a mistake that early on in online learning that a lot of courses made was they would teach, they would treat the learning management system, or they would treat the online course as the classroom. And so they would just have a recording of someone lecturing. In fact, when I first developed my online courses back starting in January of 2012, it was suggested that I just record me teaching my courses as I'm teaching them and use that. And I thought, what could be worse than that? What could be more boring than that? You know, but maybe for some people that works. For a lot of people that doesn't work. What we need is a lot of active student responding, not people just sitting there watching. I assist a couple of kids now through their summer ESY, their summer special ed that's done online. And there, with one of them, all I do is check off, I rate at the end of every 5 minutes how well he's been paying attention to the online instruction. And he rates it too. So my timer goes off silently. I look up at him. He flashes me a 2, a 1, or 0. 2, I paid really good attention. 1, I didn't pay attention. 0, or 1, I'm sort of good. 2, I paid no attention. I record my score. I record his score. I show him. He loves when the scores match. He loves when he gets 2. And I'm honest with him. I'll only give him 1s if it's really a 1. Yeah. With another one, I have to sit near him. If I sit next to him, it creates a problem. But if I sit near him and occasionally prompt him to look back at the computer when he's getting a little antsy, that's all he needs. In both of these cases, the teachers are doing a lot of really good things. What they're doing is they're requiring a lot of active student responding. What they're doing is they're every couple of minutes, every minute or every couple of minutes, all of the students either have to respond at the same time, and so that's entering something in the chat box or raising their hands, or she calls on them one at a time, or she calls on just one of them. And I say she because both teachers for these kids are women. But with the active student responding, yeah, you could say you're doing that to make sure they're paying attention. I like looking at it as you're doing that so that they have an opportunity to respond to the material that you just presented and the question you just asked, the activity you just gave them, and you have the opportunity to reinforce a correct response. And the more reinforcement, the longer you're going to keep them. Go ahead.
I really like focusing in on this active student responding thing, because I was watching, just for funsies, a couple different school board meetings last night, and some school divisions are shifting to what they are planning to be a permanent shift to an option for continued online learning even past the COVID years, which sounds great, but I question whether we've done the prep work in a lot of places for this. I mean, when we look at a lot of behaviors that we deal in classrooms, within classrooms, a lot of it's generated by repetitive busy work. And that is still very much a go-to because teachers look for things to fill time. So I love that idea of really honing in as the teacher on how do I create active student responding, because busy work in the online model is not going to work, especially in the special education model. So I think that's a great target.
Well, and let's, we're not after busy work. Busy work is just a time filler. You don't have to do time fillers when the kid is working from home, right? And when you're working from home. So that's nice. What I'm looking for now here, can I share my screen?
You can. We have all kinds of cool functionality.
All functionality,
on,
all manner of functionality. Okay, I'm going to screen share. Share my screen. A lot of people forget this exists, but you see this? Good old Bloom's taxonomy. Anyone who's a teacher already knows what this is. Some may have forgotten. I actually forgot, until I started working for the public schools about 12 years ago. But, it's what are we after the student being able to do? What should the student be able to do as a result of our instruction? And just remembering stuff to do something with it later, maybe, or remembering to answer that. It's kind of like, what's the point in memorizing dates and names unless you're going to do something with it, right?
Right.
So that is, or we all know kids who can say the alphabet, who can count to 1,000,000, but they can't add, they can't spell, they can't read. So what's the point? They can't tie their shoes, they can't ask for something to drink, they can't say, quit that, you're bothering me. So this just teaching to the bottom, that's only a start. Look at the ways that you could address what it is you're doing. And always approach things from more than one way, whether you're teaching in the classroom or online. Yes, no question might be one thing, or choose this might be another thing. But in addition to that, you have to be able to approach it. Remember, we talked about learning channels last time? You have to be able to come back at it from another way, because typically there's more than one facet to everything we're teaching. Oh, this one's English, making sense of what you've learned. Yes, let's make sense of what we learned. But
Yeah.
if all we're doing is working on the remembering part, we're not making sense of what we've learned. Here, let me find a better Blooms while you're talking.
Actually, what I really like about the Blooms and just kind of looking at this and where we're shifting to in education is that um, applying and creative, like those are two things that all of a sudden become very easy because of all the options that you have, using online instruction and with the internet. So you can get, in my mind, a lot more creative from an instructional modality and also a response modality.
Yeah.
Because you are doing the online instruction. I hate to get us off on a tangent this early, but
It's
I
never
had an
too
interesting
early.
conversation with somebody the other day. 'Cause there's that famous quote, Maslow's before Bloom's. Um,
Yeah. Wow.
and, I get a little frustrated with that because I feel like those two things can still exist simultaneously. You need
Mm-hmm.
to take into consideration both at the same time while you're teaching. And I feel like we've kind of moved from this mindset. And as we approach this coming school year and everybody's already talking about, well, the kids are, we're going to address social and emotional needs before we address educational needs. I think that's kind of leaving a lot on the table. We can do both at the same time, and we should do both at the same time.
I've worked with enough kids to know that we make a big mistake when we do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing to really, really work on that self-esteem and make the kid really feel good. But when you present him with the same old work that he still can't do, it's failure,
Right.
failure, failure, failure. And that has both operant and respondent, emotional and other, aspects to it. And that evokes all those feelings, even though the kid was feeling great a moment ago, that come with punishment and failure and making mistakes and getting yelled at for making mistakes. And
Mm-hmm.
the way I prefer to look at it is change the behavior and then the feelings follow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Teach the kid so the kid can actually get stuff right and the feelings will follow you. I'll tell you, there's a kid who I work with. I won't mention his name or anything. But he was actually working ahead yesterday, which blew my mind. I ran out to the store. He was working ahead on stuff that we're going to work on Wednesday morning. And it's math. And he called me and he said, Dr. Ted, I hope you don't mind. I'm calling you. I have a question. And I said, okay. And he needed help with the math. And this is a kid who 3 months ago would have completely shut down. He would have been crying. He would have been throwing stuff. He would have been threatening all kinds of harm to others and himself, all sorts of stuff. Now he's even doing this in his spare time when he doesn't have to. Because that feeling of the challenge, that's become a conditioned reinforcer for him.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I got that to happen was backing up to where he's successful and taking it from there, but also working from more than one angle. It's not enough for him to be able to remember what 5 minus 7 is. He has to, or 7 minus 5 is. We're not at negative numbers yet. But he has to understand that if he has 7 things and he loses 5 of them, he only has 2 left. And he has to know that if I have 2 and I say, dude, I need 7 of these, then he needs to get me 5 more. There's a lot of figuring out. If you look at this, there's a lot he needs to be able to do. We working in his house, we measure things and we add inches and subtract inches or centimeters and everything. All of this stuff you see on Blooms, we're doing. Now we're doing that at home, but this can also be done online if you pay attention to the various ways that you could approach each task that you're trying to teach. But again,
Yeah.
you gotta have frequent opportunities for active student responding in a number of different ways, so you can make sure you're getting past this remembering thing and you're getting to the understanding and applying at minimum.
Yeah. And Katie, I ran into something this morning that I know you can relate to as well, because we see a lot in the classrooms we go into. I walked in and we're supporting this school in ESY, and it's the 3rd week we've been here, and they put this pattern out, completing A/B patterns. And the first thing that was said to me by our staff was, that's the same one he's done every single day
Mhm.
of summer school. So,
Right.
you know, we
Yeah.
got,
Sorry.
I mean, I know you've seen that. Like, I just think about the creativity you had in your classroom, and you mix things up a lot. And
Yeah, and it didn't start that way. I definitely figured out that I was getting stuck in like, oh no, I am presenting the same thing, or it's every other day. Like I've accidentally created a pattern of presenting different things, but the kids know that, right? Like they know on Tuesday she's going to give me the pattern, and on Wednesday she's going to give me the blocks, um, and so we do catch ourselves, but if we have like a clear plan, yeah, you can switch it up and you can get creative, and it doesn't have to be much even. You can switch up different colors of it or different aspects of it. It doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel every time you present a task, because that will drive you crazy. But definitely switch it up, and that goes for online too. And I think it's going to take everybody a second to get used to being creative on the computer. And I think that once teachers are comfortable with it, you'll just get more and more creative and finding ways for your kids to respond and finding ways to kind of test their understanding. It's definitely going to be a creative time, but it can be done.
Well, even if they're not entirely comfortable with it, try
Yeah,
it anyway. At worst,
exactly.
whoops, Daisy. Which teacher has never had something not work out before?
Yeah, like every day.
You've
Yeah.
already been there. Now you're just there
Sure.
online. Okay, at least no one can throw anything at you. You know.
Right.
yeah,
And sped teachers, you're used to that, right? You're used to
Yeah.
having to switch things up, and it's a trial and error time for sure. So don't be hard on yourself.
Now, about switching things up, one of the kids who I work with last week, I'm sitting across the table from him while he's doing his ESY. He's having class online. And whenever the teacher would call on him, it was, is it this or this? And so maybe 10 times in the course of that lesson, in the course of 30 minutes, he was called on and asked, is it this or this? And he got each and every one of them right. And each and every one of them was always the last thing she said.
Yeah.
right.
So,
Yeah.
is it pen or paper? The answer would be paper, right? The
Right.
answer was never the first thing she said. Let's pay attention to that too. That certainly helps you meet those VAP goals, right? You can check off getting it right. 4 out of 5 times on 3 out of 4 occasions, but do that math. What is that? 80% times 7, 60% of the time he's right, 40% of the time he's wrong. Well, when I tested it out after class that day, because I was still with him for a couple hours, I got less than chance level responding, because I wasn't reinforcing. I got 1 out of 10 because he was not only like initially always guessing the last one, but since I wasn't reinforcing, he figured out something's not right here.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'd always guess the first one. But by then I'd switch to the last one. I wanted to see if he was actually listening and doing that conditional discrimination.
Yeah. So it's been fun. I think one of the most entertaining parts of watching these school board meetings is watching all the comments that fly in whenever they're being live streamed on Facebook. But one consistent comment that comes up as they talk about this online instruction is, what about the SPED kids? What about kids with disabilities? What about, kids that are adaptive learners? And this can work for them too. We've been doing it at EBCS. We've been working with kids and figuring it out. But like Katie said, it's been a creative trial and error process for sure for us. And, we've just kind of stuck with it and found what works for that kid. And I think that is something that teachers are going to have to be very mindful of, that I think the only mistake that they can really make with this is trying to force old kind of in classroom teaching styles onto online learning. You're going to have to figure out what works for each kid and in each home, because even you don't control the instructional environment anymore. It's not your classroom. You don't have home field advantage. So you've got to take all that into consideration. And I think that there is a very different thing in just doing something and learning something. And I would say that applies also in the physical classroom too, when we're doing, instruction face to face. that our role as teachers is not to just get the kids to do something, it's to teach them something. So keeping that in mind, that as you are kind of working through your planning on this, and I think back to my classroom days and developing lesson plans, and like, just, it kind of gives me a headache trying to think of how I would have done lesson plans for online learning. I mean, Ted, you've been doing it for a while for, the collegiate level, but when we're working with, 20 kids in a first grade classroom, or even a kindergarten classroom, and what does that look like?
20
But I do think
doctoral level students can be just as challenging.
as kindergartners.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to note, while we preach how reinforcement is everything in the classroom, it's the same online. Is it going to look different? Yes. And we have to figure it out, but that's huge. We have to make sure we still have those schedules of reinforcement, and that goes along with your differentiation, right? For SPED and for any kids, but especially in SPED, that is differentiating. Make sure you're figuring out, what am I reinforcing them with before you start your lesson? That's going to be everything. It has to be motivating, and they have to find it reinforcing. So just like you pair with your kids in the classroom, pair with them online.
Let's think about this. For a lot of our kids, the computer or the tablet has been the fun machine, right? It hasn't been for work. Now it's for work. Well, they'll sit all day, if you let them, in front of the fun machine. And the people who design things for the fun machine, they get it. They're very smart instructional designers. It's not all work. It's you have to do a little bit of responding, and then there's some fun, and a little bit of responding, and then there's some fun, a little bit of responding, and then there's some fun. Well, what that does is it makes getting it right a conditioned reinforcer. And for a lot of our people, getting it right is already a conditioned reinforcer. But what you can also do is schedule the lesson so that you're interspersing fun, which on the surface may not appear like it's having much instructional value, but it actually is. You can intersperse fun with the work, which you also try to fill with reinforcement. What one of the teachers of one of my kids does, and this is, at first I thought, well, this is kind of a waste of time. And then it kind of occurred to me, wait a second, no, he's staying with her the whole time. This kid who'd rather be over there playing cars is staying with her the whole time. And what's going on in that classroom is she starts with a music video that the kids like, a short one or part of one, and then they do some work, and then there's a little more video, and then they do some work, and then a little more video, and they do some work and a little more video. And she's really smart, because it's not work 5 minutes, get a video, work 5 minutes. It's unpredictable. It's on this variable interval schedule. So at various points throughout, following differing amounts of time, following differing amounts of work, there's a bit of fun. And that's kind of, for movies that we watch, that we like, it's not, all chasing, stuff blowing up, they throw some plot in there. They throw some other stuff in there, right?
Sometimes.
They just
work,
not all movies.
Work for the chase scene, work for the explosion or the shark. So anyway, I'll be quiet now and let you two talk. But let's think in terms of active student responding, but also in terms of maintaining attention, making this the fun machine for school, and upping the reinforcement value for doing school by embedding highly reinforcing things. I think there's a lot that can be done there.
Yeah, I think when we made the transition, I guess it was probably back in May, where we started to get involved with some students online. The toughest thing was figuring out the reinforcement. But once we figured it out, one of the advantages we had to it was we controlled really that schedule of reinforcement very strictly. So if you think about how technology is used for reinforcement in classrooms, a lot of times the student does maybe a few minutes of work, and then he gets an extended period of time on the iPad or interacting with some form of technology. Whereas what we found very early on when we were doing the delivery was we could kind of control that access to that reinforcement. Now, we're working with more functional and adaptive learners with this. So while I definitely agree with you, that getting it right has to become reinforcing. We have to start somewhere with these guys, and what we were using were different like videos that we knew they liked. We did a lot of preference assessments with the parents, music videos, stories being read aloud, but we could play a little bit of it, right, and kind of establish them wanting more of it, get a little bit more workout, and then play it again and control how long they were able to access it a little bit more rigidly. So that was a benefit. But I think one of the things teachers are going to walk away from the online instruction with is how important reinforcement really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my hope is, anyway, that they're going to kind of think about the opportunities that they miss to reinforce by being in the classroom with the students. Because all of a sudden those opportunities to just walk past the student, pat them on the shoulder and say, hey, you're doing a great job. Those are gone when we're removing this online modality. So,
it's awfully easy. Yeah, I agree with you. And it's awfully easy for me at the university level to lecture for 3 hours. It's awfully easy for me to lecture for a little bit and then say, okay, now split up into groups of 3, and I want you to work on this, and I'll give you 10 minutes, but I drag it out to 20 because I have to fill some time. It's all really easy. And then when you go through and you actually design the course, you design the class so that there is a lot of active student responding, and I'm taking advantage of all this stuff from Bloom's. Actually, I'm addressing all this stuff and the learning channels. It kind of affects how you do stuff live too. Because you realize, wait a second, I've really been, blowing it there. I should have had these guys doing all this other stuff too. And then you start doing that. Let's think about this though. There's going to need to be a lot of adjusting. And, make no mistake, and we shouldn't make it sound like everything's going to be easy, because we know it's not. But there's stuff that we can do really well online that it's harder to do in person. Think about this. With my guy who would always choose the last thing I said, or the last thing the teacher said, and I always get it right, is it pen or paper? Well, we can't do position prompt, right? Because they're both on his screen. But what I can do is it pen or paper? I can whisper it, right? Is it paper or pen? And then we fade it, right? We get the volume equal after we've reinforced it a bunch of times. And we teach, pay attention to both parts. There are a bunch of different ways that we can do this stuff. If we think about it, we have to work on how to reinforce. And a problem that I see with reinforcement is queuing stuff up so that it's ready. You kind of have to plan ahead on that. Don't go searching for the video, because that's going to take some time. And then you find the video, and then you have to sit through a 15-second commercial first. They learn all about saving money on their car insurance.
Right.
And then they get the music video, but by then they're halfway across the room. No, you have to have it all queued up ahead of time.
Yeah, be as prepared as you can, but also know that there will be a technical difficulty at some point. Just know that there's going to be, like, prime yourself, like, okay, this might happen and I'll handle it. Have like a little backup plan, something you can do. It happened to me once. We were working on math and I had this whole cute video ready and it wasn't working. And I ended up using sticky notes, and we did like sticky note math, like over Zoom. And you just be creative, take a deep breath. You're a teacher and you've done it before. You can do it again, but do know that there will be a technical difficulty at some point. They're inevitable.
Yeah, Katie, I was thinking about the bear links.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was this day.
So Katie and I,
yeah.
What?
we had this one kind of interactive game that we could do kind of over the internet with the student. And we had used this link for years. I mean, I've used it for like 5-6 years.
And this child found this so reinforcing. He worked so hard for this. He had a great lesson. And then like, the bears aren't working. Like, no.
And what it was, the designers ended up changing the URL, and there was no forwarding URL for it. So, it can really work against you if you just kind of always assume that it's gonna be there. And
Yeah,
so like
even
Kate
if
said,
you're
yeah, just
prepared, because a lot of you
prepping.
teachers are like type A and like you've checked everything, you've looked over your like Google Slides thing that you're going to use, and you've done everything the night before, even right before it in the morning, and then something's not working. So
What that
So
does do
what,
it happens.
is it gives you the opportunity to model for your students how to handle when things get too
Mhm.
Exactly.
because you
Yeah.
know a lot of our students have that difficulty.
Yep.
And
Like
no,
sometimes things
modeling at
don't
one
work.
time isn't going to fix it, but don't worry, you'll goof up again. You'll have a lot
Yeah.
of
yeah,
opportunities to know that. Oops, I goofed that one up. Or like my guy who still occasionally swears, but not all the time. And that's a problem for his family. You know, he has the things taped to cards on his desk that he could say instead, like, oh, fiddlesticks, because he thought that was funny. Or, oh, tartar sauce from SpongeBob. Or
Mhm.
goof that one up. Well, you can, just say one of those things. Well, goof that one up. Okay, we can fix this. Let's try this. And narrate your way through and you can say, okay, Gary, you see how I'm doing this? I'm typing this and um LaShawn, you think this one's gonna work? What do you think? Let's try. You can keep the kids involved in that too, and
absolutely.
just and oh, that one didn't work.
Oh
Goof that
no.
one up.
Yeah.
And just call, talk, involve them in that because you're teaching that social skill while you're doing
Mhm.
Yeah, and just one of the things that I saw the other day, just I was wowed by one of our staff members had Kate. She's been on here. She had designed this thing of modeling for the student how to get ready to work, and she supported. She's like first we're going to clear everything off the desk, and she took her computer and she kind of held it up so she could model taking everything off and what it looks like to have a clean
Like
work
cats.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, like cats. And just kind of like really prime the student to get ready, but she included herself in that, and I think that's
Very
um,
cool.
it worked so well. And this was a student that we had a lot of difficulty with just kind of bringing things to the work area, bringing toys to the work area, and when that happened, she would lose instructional control. Kate would lose instructional control. So she's like, I got this figured out. I'm gonna prep it. And she modeled clearing the area, getting it ready, making that a process. She involved the student. So she would say, okay, what are we gonna do next? And the student would say, we're gonna, get the mouse ready or whatever. So
Think
again,
of
that's that active response from the student.
Well, and think of all the things you can model like that, like
Yeah.
toothbrushing, like making your own sandwich,
Right. This is a good
like
time to
matching
do
socks.
functional skills. We can
Yeah.
insert it is okay. It's actually better for generalization that we have this opportunity over via Zoom or whatever we're using to take things we're teaching at school, and now we can apply them in real life home situations. Like, this is awesome. We can do teeth brushing like Ted said, or making a sandwich, and it can help you out as a parent too.
I don't recommend toilet training this way.
That would be
No,
difficult.
probably would be bad. Yes.
Don't model that. Don't model taking a
We can
shower.
reach for the stars, but not like,
Yeah,
I don't
not
know,
that
like
far.
galaxies away.
Yeah.
Stay.
Bad
But no,
idea.
Kate, I love that idea. Like I hadn't even thought about that. Like just in the kitchen, right? Okay, we're gonna make a
Yeah.
sandwich, and the teacher could be in the kitchen, because one of the things that keeps coming up is how do we work with
It's like a field trip.
our
to the
more
kitchen.
yeah our more higher needs learners, and like we're just working on simple kind of following directions or sequencing things like that. That's a great way to do it, and it's in that natural environment. I mean, you can even argue for the adaptive and functional
It's
learners,
even better.
because it is in that natural
Yeah.
environment. We can
It's in there.
really do a lot.
Yeah.
So that's a great idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that's
of course,
going
that
to be the
means-
biggest challenge, just the
Mm.
equity of learning online and being creative with it. So
And we
that
know that
means-
it's going to be different. Sorry, Ted.
Go ahead.
I know it's going to be different parents, different household situations, right? So we have to be mindful of how we are in our lesson planning. Think about which child in their home situation that you're planning for. Like, is it going to be reasonable to be in the kitchen? Is it going to be reasonable to communicate with mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or whoever their
Yeah.
caregiver is? Is it going to be reasonable to do some of these things? So to be creative, but make sure it makes sense for the situation and for that specific child.
Well, yeah, you'll have to email ahead or somehow
Mhm.
make sure people know. Okay,
Just like field trips.
making sandwiches tomorrow. Please
Yeah.
make sure you have sandwich fixins and someone
Yeah.
help, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gonna require a little bit more communication with the parents.
Mhm.
The parents gonna be more of a partner in the educational process, and I think that would be a great byproduct out of all
Yeah,
this.
you
To be
might
honest
create
with you,
some
I mean,
even better relationships with parents, and you might get more done. There,
yeah.
a lot of good can come from it as well.
So when you just think about some logistical things, kind of behavioral logistical things, to make your life, because a lot of teachers out there, whether they want to or not, because I have this theory that, you know, eventually we're all going to be online at some point, as numbers change, and you know, everybody seems to have a plan A, plan B, and there's that plan B that involves shifting to complete online learning at some point. Think about what you can do just kind of for your own sanity. Having that specific workspace, that specific routine, that you kind of switch on being at work. For me, back in the spring, I had to put shoes on, even though I was walking into just my dining room, which is where my computer was set up. If I didn't have shoes on, I wasn't awake. I wasn't engaged.
That's
You know,
funny.
it's like, it was my thing. Yeah, I
You
mean,
had to have your shoes on. I definitely don't have shoes on, but like you do what you gotta do. Yeah.
you got to find those things.
Yeah.
You know, find a place apart. Everybody struggles with it. Working from home is a completely different reality for teachers. You know,
I
it's a
need to
completely
make
different
sure that
environment.
part of my office is clean. You don't
It
see
looks
it,
very nice.
and then I'm wearing a shirt. So,
I'm always amazed at how straight all your books are.
yeah,
They're always like just. It
They look
looks like a
good.
library, and I'm impressed. I imagine there's a Dewey Decimal System going on there, and
a little bit, yeah.
a card catalog somewhere.
There's a bunch of books in it. Books are
Yeah.
very decorative. Think about it though. When you're teaching online, there are a lot of adjustments. We have to adjust reinforcement. We have to adjust active student responding. We have to adjust instructions and prompts. We have to pay attention to those conditional discriminations. We have to pay attention, make sure we're hitting all the learning channels, and we have to make sure that we're working through blooms, not just staying on remembering, but we have to do that all the time anyway. Now, the reinforcement thing, talked about embedding it, right? Making it happen periodically throughout, and having a near continuous schedule for the active student responding. Face-to-face, we don't have to have that continuous schedule. But active
Right.
student responding online, that's the way video games work. That's the way Wiggles videos work, right?
Mhm.
It's near continuous reinforcement. So there's nothing wrong with, yep, got it right. It's free, it's easy, it's quick. You could do choral responding, so everyone says something. You could do individual responding. You could call on people. You could have people hit something that goes into the chat box. There's a lot of things you could do. When you're embedding video or music or other things, no one says you have to play the whole video or the whole song. Have it queued up. You know, get this much right? Yes, 10 seconds of video. Hit pause. Okay, we're going to come back to that. Let's come back to this. Get them to do more work. You don't have to spend in a 30-minute class session 15 minutes on videos.
Mhm.
You
Right.
can get to the point where there's that one music video that lasts you the whole session
Right.
because you have to do this much work or this much work or this much work to get this much video, and you make
Yeah.
it last.
Right. Just like
Ted, I
how.
wanna
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kate. No, go ahead.
It's just like in the classroom how, and I think Chad, you probably mentioned this earlier, I can't remember. Just like in the classroom, how if you have a child do a lesson and then they get like free time or that's a reinforcement. Remember, if you're reinforcing, like let's say you only have 30-minute session, you don't want to give them 10 minutes of work and then give them like video time, right?
No.
Because you're going to have the same behavioral problems and you want to expand on that online as you would in the classroom. So make sure, just like Ted said, you're splitting it up and reinforcement's less than 5 minutes, right?
Although initially, that first week of school,
Yeah,
whether it's
definitely
August or
more.
September, you might want to do that. But each day, bring it down a little bit.
Yeah,
So
slowly.
maybe the
Yeah.
first day, a lot of music video, a lot of something else, and a little bit of work. But bring it down by a few minutes each day so that in the end, by the end of the second week, you have about 5-7 minutes of video at various points, not 5, 7 each, but 5 or 7 minutes altogether at various points in the
Right.
lesson.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you can interrupt that video just as like a quick
Absolutely.
little,
Just hit
and
pause.
yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. We use videos sometimes. Even we had escape behavior. Occasionally, we were working with a guy, and he would kind of run out of the room, and the parent's first response was to kind of get up and go after them. But what we did, we just had the parent turn the volume up and play a video that we knew he liked, and that was enough to bring him back to the computer. So you can
Right.
you have all these funny controls now at your fingertips. And Ted's example is. It relates to something we say in the classroom all the time, like when we're talking about like setting up bin work, right? When we start bin work, we're not going to put really hard stuff in each bin. We start with everything 1, 2, 3 being something they want to do, and then gradually introduce, you know, one of the bins as being task demand, and then fade it to where all the bins are task demand eventually. But Ted, I wanted to cycle back around to something you talked about a little bit, and it was in relationship to data. And looking at, especially if you're a SPED teacher and you're trying to design instruction, be very mindful of prompting over, you know, the internet, like Ted was saying, because you're going to have to generate all your IEP data in a very different way now, and very, you know,
Yeah, don't have the
we
right
had a
answer on the left every single time. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
right.
That's something you can think about, though. You can plan it that way if you're presenting them visually. And I'm thinking teaching conditional discriminations. Okay, all the girls answer this one. If that's what you're saying, then you can have pictures of just the girls and their names on the screen as you're saying all the girls answer this one. All the
Right.
boys answer this one. You know, if your name starts with C, answer this one. You know, there are ways
and
to-
a new reality too with the prompting is you have a parent sitting there, and parents, just by nature, we don't want our children to fail or to do badly. So I was working with a student, and he was reading, and I could hear the parent, because I was trying to run a probe on a certain reading level with the student, and I could hear the parent whispering the words to the student, you know, as he was doing the cold read. And
Yeah.
those are things that we're going to have to talk about and factor in, and just be very mindful that as we kind of build an IEP, because there's some teachers out there, you guys are going to have IEPs that are developed. Your present levels are going to all of a sudden be developed out of a year of online learning. And it presents a lot of challenges for validity with your data, and just be mindful of how you're factoring it into your data collection. So, but I don't know. It's going to be a big shift.
Yeah,
Ted, you want to bring?
do what?
You want to keep Blooms up, or did you have? You said, I thought you said you had another visual you wanted to share.
Oh, well, this is
Or
a
were you
Bloom.
just trying? Oh, okay.
No.
You're just trying to find a better one.
And the learning challenge. No, there's Blooms right there.
Gotcha.
It is, but again, it's a challenge on both sides. It's a challenge. First, the parents are especially challenged. You know, teachers are teaching at home, probably with their kids there, doing their own online classes while the teachers are teaching their classes, right? So that's difficult. Well, parents who love their children but would rather be at work are going to be home with their kids, sort of being teachers along with the teacher. It's going to be a challenge for everyone, which is why, you know, it takes some planning, but I wouldn't get too anxious about it.
Yeah. One step at a time.
Every area, you could use everything as an opportunity to teach something. Goof that one up.
Right.
Okay, let's try it this way. And enlist the help of those parents when you can. Although you do have to understand that some of them may have 2 kids doing classes at the same time. And then what do you do with that? Unless you're in one of those very wealthy school districts that provides each child with a computer or a tablet. If the family has 1 computer,
right,
and then 4 kids, each of them doing online school, that's going to be a trick.
right.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point. I mean, a lot of kids don't even interact with computers anymore. I mean, a lot of their interaction with technology is tablet based,
Right.
or even phone based. So now all of a sudden there's a keyboard. There's, you know, they can just close the laptop. The school division I was watching their school board meeting, they're buying all laptops, even for as low as kindergarten. And, it's really easy for a kindergartner to say, I'm done, and just shut you down.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
having a mute button for the teacher.
that's true.
But one of the things, kind of going back to the parents, that we found when we were working with the kids that we were working with directly, was that if we could separate the parents a little bit, because a lot of the kids we were working with were very, they had a lot of attention maintained behavior, right? So the parent being right there created a lot of that behavior. So if we were able to engage the student enough in the activity, and the parent was able to kind of step away, the parents enjoyed that, they welcomed that, and B, it created a greater instructional relationship between the student. Ultimately, to the point, Katie, I think one time where you had to like get the student to shut down and leave, because he was, just, hey, I'm hanging out with Miss Katie.
Yeah, there was one really great lesson out of a bunch of really hard lessons that we had, and yeah, he was like, oh, like, both of us, it was to the point, we'd had him to the point where neither of his parents were in the room, which was really cool. His dad was in another room down the hall, and I was like, go get your dad. He's like, but, and this kid was so attention maintained. And again, remember, when you're seeing those maladaptive behaviors that you don't want to see, like if the kid's running from the room, or like playing with things, or like threatening, or whatever they're doing, make sure you're figuring out what the function is, because it definitely is going to change the way you address it. So this specific child, it was all about attention. And it's the same kid that we said would run out of the room, we'd play video so he'd come back, because if his mom had gone to get him down the hallway, it would have been harder to get him back, because he already had that attention from his mom.
Mm-hmm.
If the mom didn't give him that attention, the video was still motivating enough to get him back with us.
Yeah.
So it's really hard as a teacher, because you're not there. But you got to get creative and understand what the function is before you address it.
Well, and I think that one of the, again, I see some silver linings to all this. I've been somewhat entertained by some of the different teacher Facebook pages that are out there, and experts on classroom discipline and be a master of discipline in the classroom and stuff like that. That the idea of discipline over online learning is going to be kind of null and void. A clip chart is not going to be as effective. Well, I don't think clip charts are effective anyway, but a clip chart's not really going to maintain a student's behavior. So you are going to have to be very specific to that that individual student, and designing a plan for them. Because ultimately, you've got to remember, at the end, you're not controlling the entire aspect of that student's day like you were whenever they were in school. I don't know how the school divisions are going to do it, whether it's going to be like 1 hour blocks,
Right.
30 minutes. I mean, the kids that we're working with, we've been doing like 45-minute, 1 hour blocks. I struggle to see like a student staying on the computer all day long,
Right.
and just kind of running a virtual class.
Yeah, where the kids who I work with, their school division, what they do is they have a 30-minute block that's the entire class, and they're small classes. One has like 12 kids. The other one's class has 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then they each get either individual or small group, a half an hour of that in addition.
And that's gen ed.
Yeah, no, that's special ed.
Oh, okay.
And then there are some activities that are sent home by email or by mail that the parents work on with the kids.
Cool.
Yeah. And if they have a behavior analyst or RBT working with them, perhaps that person might help too. But with regard to help, I'm sure EBCS is here to help too. If teachers should have questions, school divisions should have questions, if they need suggestions to how to present something, how to modify something, etc.
Absolutely. We're designing training specifically for online learning with adaptive and functional learners. And we've been fortunate to have the opportunity to kind of play with it and work with some students and some great parents that have allowed us to kind of do some stuff by trial and error. And it was a learning process. And, even very, very early on, there was a lot of frustration with it of, how do I keep this kid engaged? What is the actual response that I'm looking for? But we definitely offer a training for your school divisions for this. And those that are contracted with us already, like Richmond City, you're going to be have access to this. It'll Ms. Parks has already made sure of that, and we welcome any inquiries. Refer us over to your special education director, even if you're not in Virginia. The great thing about the virtual world now is that we can really kind of expand our reach to a lot of this. Pam, I like the yay. That was
Yeah.
that was great.
It's reinforcing for us. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Even if you're not in the US, we can work with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't want mass panic, right? Like this is a lot for everybody. I've got family members that work in the school system and they're panicked because they've never used these online platforms, but take it one step at a time. Don't be too hard on yourself. And we're here to help you map it out as well. So.
Well, and we have to remember, our students are already really good at learning from computers and tablets and phones. That,
absolutely.
Hand any kid one of these, they can get to the Wiggles video or whatever it is they play. They can get to whatever game they want. They know exactly what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're kind of living, it's funny, we're almost like in their domain a little bit because even very young students are just so fluid and working and interacting with technology. Mm-hmm. The difference is going to be kind of, you've got a shift of what they have access to directly versus what you're presenting. We'll kind of talk about that next week when we talk about this from the other end of the computer where the kid's sitting. But I think kind of the big takeaways are that preparation and not minimizing the importance of reinforcement in all this.
Well, and again,
it's everything still.
Thinking about what you can do with the kid there at home that you can't do when the kid's in your classroom. Let's take advantage of all of that. We're not looking to duplicate the classroom. We're looking to do something different that capitalizes on everything available in the learning management system and the instructional design aspect and there at home.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
We cannot recreate the classroom completely. I think
try to.
I don't feel pressure to make everything exactly how it was and for instruction to produce the exact same amount or exact same kind of results. It's not. So don't set yourself up for failure or, think about this in a creative way. Think about, like Ted said, what you can do in this situation that you couldn't do before. And
we may have students that actually find more success over this modality of learning.
Yeah, for sure.
That we're struggling, whether it be academically or behaviorally, and in the school setting. And I think that we really haven't changed the way we've presented education. The instructional model of education has kind of lingered around for a really long time. So this is a chance for you to be part of developing something new and coming up with creative and new ideas. And I think the biggest struggle, just having worked in a class, in schools and married to a teacher as well, that teachers are social by nature. They they lean on each other. They interact with each other a lot. And I think that's one of the hardest things when you remove that kind of family feeling of working within a school. But there's no reason why that can't extend into the virtual environment and just maintaining cohorts. And we talked a little bit about that yesterday when we were meeting Katie, that working together and sharing ideas is really how we're going to kind of navigate this new educational reality.
Yeah, I have a feeling you guys are still going to have grade level meetings once a week or whatever. That's still going to be necessary and probably even more important to come together just to talk about what's working, what's not working. Share ideas, share templates, share everything. Honestly, collaboration is even more important than it already really was. So,
absolutely. All right. Well.
Look at us on time. Wow.
Wow. That's what I told you. We needed you or Kate here to keep.
I didn't do much, but I got you. Yeah, I'll make sure we stop at 10:30. Yeah.
I heard something I have not heard before last night. I won't say what school division I was listening to, but I actually heard a superintendent say, if we ever go back into the school building at all. And
you meant this year, right?
Yeah, no, I know, but a lot of people were thinking that if there is a layoff of virtual learning, it'll be kind of a temporary thing, and that it immediately, even within the room, it
Everyone's like,
got a lot of gasps.
right.
And I just think, just kind of from a mental health standpoint, that we just have to be prepared for everything.
Yeah.
I know we had a conversation yesterday, kind of amongst our organization, that just we're planning for everything. The more prepared we feel, I think the better we feel about
It's
what
more comforting
might
when
or
you
might
have
not
a
happen.
plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that would be kind of one of my takeaways for you, is just, instead of being reactionary, to be kind of preparatory of what may happen, and then you just have these tricks and tools in your bag ready to go when you need them. And hopefully you're getting support from your school division. If you're not, tell them to look up EBCS, Evidence-Based Classroom Solutions.
Yep.
And we've got some great trainings that can help you guys out. So with that, I will say goodbye.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
Yep. Bye-bye.